As extreme weather conditions continue to wreak havoc across the country, let's get you an update on the state of the grid. Eskom spokesperson Daphne Mokwena joins us this afternoon. Daphne, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much for your time. There's a cold snap. We've seen snow in many parts of the country. Of course, the next question is, are we going to get through this with electricity for those of us lucky enough to have it?
Yeah. No, good afternoon, Michelle, and good afternoon to your viewers. So currently, as we have announced last Friday, the power system still remains stable as you know that we're coming from a high or intensified maintenance season. And with that, we have lowered that maintenance about, our maintenance or planned maintenance was ranging at about 7,000 or 8,000 megawatts, and we currently averaging at about 4,035. So that gives us a little bit of headroom actually can sustain, the system or the power system and manage the demand or the increased demand that we're seeing. We're looking at demand now having increased to about 30,000, a couple of hundreds. We're forecasting about 30,700 this evening. Although today, surprisingly, we're seeing that demand as compared to yesterday is tapering off a little bit and is giving us a little bit of, as I said, headroom to meet today's or the evening demand. But with that said, remember, we also have our emergency reserves, which we normally use when we reach peak demand during the evening or the morning when we need to do so. This morning, we didn't use much of our emergency reserves, and we're hoping to use emergency reserves this peak evening. We know that we've got isolated, in areas where we are experiencing snow, like in KZN and Eastern Cape. Unfortunately, we've got customers or areas, a couple of areas that or a number of areas that are off, but our teams are on the ground. Unfortunately, in other areas, we're still struggling to get access to our networks.
Yeah, that was my next question, Daphne. So there's obviously been no official alert about load shedding being in play in any area, but I am seeing quite a number of posts on social media of power outages across the country.
Yes. So remember, with load shedding, with load shedding, as I said, that the system is stable. With load shedding is when supply is not sufficient to can meet our demand. But currently, we've got enough generation capacity to meet our demand. So what we're seeing currently is because of the gale winds, because of the snow or that inclement weather, that's the reason why we're seeing our breakers tripping and affecting isolated areas in these in Eastern Cape, or the two provinces mainly. But other than that, as I said, that most of our breakers in Eastern Cape and KZN, we've got issues with accessing those areas as quick as we wanted to. Hence, we've got delayed or we are not responding, quick enough to can go and fix or repair those networks. In areas like Gauteng, we are having also networks that are, or it's isolated networks also that we have seen tripping, but in most cases in Gauteng, it's because of those networks overloading. And this could be due to high demand, as we would know that most of these areas, especially where we are close to informal settlement or where we've got customers having backyard dwellers, we would have this particular phenomenon where we see our network overloading and our system tripping. But these are isolated, and it doesn't mean that we are load shedding.
Okay.
It's just isolated outages where we expect customers to report them, but we are aware of those ones in the Eastern Cape and in the KZN, where we've got about 50 MVA that we have lost in the KZN, and in Eastern Cape, we've got about, since last night, about 300,000 customers that are affected by, these networks that have tripped. And unfortunately, as I said, that in some area, we're struggling to get access to go and fix as quick as possible.
Right. So this isn't part of Eskom's infamous load reduction?
No, this is not load reduction. Although load reduction, you would know that we do implement load reduction, but normally we implement load reduction during peak periods, which is early morning from 5 to 9, or and from in other, and that would be 2 hours. Depending on an area, it would be from 5 to 9, but normally 2 hours. In Gauteng, it's 5 hours, and it's from 5 to 10 in the morning and in the evening. And this is just to manage the overloading that I spoke about of transformers, because we're trying to protect that infrastructure from being damaged, because once we get that infrastructure damaged, it takes a little bit of time to fix or replace, and we leave customers, off for a longer period. So to avoid that, which is to protect the network and protect customers from being, in the cold for longer periods, we do implement that load reduction.
Right.
But that is during evening and morning peak. So during the day, we don't implement load reduction.
So Daphne, Eskom published its winter outlook at the beginning of May, right? And then, of course, we know the last instance of stage 2 load shedding happened mid-May, but we've been relatively stable since then. So if we look at the winter outlook that was published at the start of the month of May, is that pretty much still in place?
So that's still pretty much in play, although we're still saying that in as much as the system is stable, we do on occasional days see, the system being constrained, and hence what we announced during the 5th of May, when we announced our winter outlook, it's still in effect, where if we reach we exceed the 13,000 threshold, or if we reach about 15,000 megawatts, we will unfortunately have to implement load shedding and restrict it to stage 2. But for now, we still find, as I say, that those occasional constraints, as we get those occasional or we experience those constraints, we do use or deploy our emergency reserves to meet demand.
And the advice, as always, is to use electricity sparingly, even in the midst of this cold snap. If you are able to make a fire safely with wood, do that, and all of the other measures that we know of.
Yes. And especially, Michelle, during evening peak, because this is when we see demand, increasing. And this is where, as I said, when we look at demand currently, yesterday, we looked at we had about 30,000 megawatts, and we are expecting 30,700 tonight. But what we can urge the public to do is to reduce demand by using other forms of heating, so that we don't get to that stage where we have to load shed.
All right, Daphne Mokwena, thanks very much for the update on the grid. Daphne is Eskom's spokesperson. Of course, when cold snaps hit, that's one of the questions we ask about the safety of electricity supply.